Okay, welcome and thank you for zooming in to Tastefully Provocative. This evening, we're going to discuss some of the topics that relate to the development and the division of the Black family. So welcome Aisha, Ken, and Kevin McDaniel. Well, Aisha Randolph. I don't want to make it seem like you guys are all related. How is everyone doing?
I'm cool.
So I found I kind of like the format that we did last week as far as watching and discussing. And, I don't think that excuse me?
I'm sorry, I didn't say anything.
Oh, and I found like 3 videos that I just thought were, not that we're going to watch 3 videos, but I did want to watch 2. They're very short. One is like 4 minutes. I think we can just kind of talk after that one. And if we want to look at another one, we can. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, it went away. Let me see. Here we go. So this, can you see the video?
On a serious note,
No, you got to share the screen.
All right.
have survived as they have. What say you about that 400 years later?
Okay, wait. Okay, now it is. Okay, this one you might be familiar with. Let me just, I went backwards. Let me turn up the volume just to make sure everybody can hear it. It doesn't dig deep, but it touches on a couple of different subtopics that leads our discussion.
But on a serious note, to the extent that Black relationships
Can you see
have
it?
survived as they have, what say you about that 400 years later?
It is amazing that Black relationships have lasted for 400 years. They lasted this morning. They're also going to last tonight, and you may not even know the person to whom you're going to have the relationship with. But they do tend to go over. Relationships do go over like that. And as we move into what has happened to this, I know that our relationships sometimes really reach a low ebb. That's one of the reasons why we wrote the book, How to Find and Keep a BMW, a Black Man Working. It was spelled out in there. It's just very serious. Because relationships, our relationships didn't start yesterday or last week. It also started 400 years ago when those 19 persons were here. And I want you to remember something very important that one of our by any means necessary power brokers told us, and that was Malcolm X. He said, if we can only remember that you didn't land at Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on you. And it's very essential that we kind of keep this in place. And knowing that these things have happened, then we have to move more to change it. See, we have a system that would not like to see Black males and Black females together. They would not like to see that happening at all. Because once we come together, they understand the power of the strength of the Black woman, the queen of the universe. Know that. We also know the power of the Black male, the warrior. If you would turn him loose, he will protect also his family and things that need to be done. And because they understand that if our relationships are together, then they will lose. But if our relationships are torn up, then we can forever be treated in certain ways by the oppressors. That's why they gave us something called integration, which is nothing but the illusion of inclusion. They gave us this. They actually gave that statement. And when they gave that statement, it meant that they could go right into your homes. They went into the Black homes now, the powers that be, and told us that you cannot discipline your children anymore. And if you discipline your children, you were going direction. Some social worker come in there saying you can't discipline your children, the social worker would disappear. As you all know, this kind of thing would go on. You would be sitting in a place like this, and all you had to do was act up and do something wrong, and all your mother had to do was to glance in your direction. Y'all remember that? And you remember that the glance meant, don't let me have to get up and come over there. And every once in a while in the black family, there was a fool who would challenge the glance. And if you could get home over the foot, over the ironing card, over whatever, you were sent to the backyard to get something off the peach tree. And if you brought something in that was too short, God forbid that you would do something like that. But then it got so terrible and frightening us. This is why we got to take this back. And this is the best part of our action plan is to reclaim the minds of our children. Because then they went into the public schools and took discipline out of there. So when we acted up in there, they put our boys, our black men, into something called special ed classes. And if you know, those special ed classes are nothing but holding cells until they can go to the state prison. But this is what they do. And then, the one thing that they knew that if we can put them in prison, if we can have them convicted for a felony, then once they get out of prison, they cannot get a job because of that. They cannot get the job. And then if they happen to eke out and find a job, then they have to pay taxes on a job, yet they cannot vote. And I call that taxation without representation. That's what we're looking at. And if one of the things that we would learn to do, they did a grand thing when they took that discipline away from us, because when they made our parents afraid to discipline the children, then what happened? We found out that the teachers were afraid of the principals, were scared of the superintendents, superintendent was scared of the school board was scared of the parents were scared of the children, and the children ain't scared of nobody.
Can't hear anything at this point.
The last statement, the reason why we're so pleased to have the covenant, it makes all of this type foolishness stop. It's going on under Angela Glover in San Francisco. It's all over the country. And they're all saying, we finally have a movement where we can take back over the minds of our children. And the first thing we got to take over, the covenant taught us that we do not have to have black leaders anymore. They told us because everyone in this room is empowered to be a black leader.
Can you guys hear this?
No.
Right now, these people that you're calling black leaders are not what they used to be with Marcus Garvey's day. They're not what they used to be back in the days of W.E.B. Du Bois and Martin Luther King. Those were the people that got us together and planted a strategy, and we're not looking for fame. But today's black leaders, I'm afraid, have become leading blacks. And don't ever confuse leading blacks with black leaders.
Robin, can you hear me?
One of the reasons you don't confuse them, black leaders are chosen by you. They're chosen by the people they're going to lead. tell you about the leading blacks? The leading blacks are chosen by the media. Leading blacks. Leading blacks are chosen by ABC, all broadcasting Caucasians.
Robin, can you hear us?
Should I stop her or let her go?
JK, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but it seems that Robin can't.
I can't hear the video.
Same.
Leading blacks are
Aisha, can you hear me?
Yes.
nothing broadcast.
And Robin, you can hear me too? Something's up with your audio. We can barely hear you, and the video, it seems like you turned it down or something.
No, I didn't turn it down.
Even your audio right now is low.
It's low.
It's parts of it, there's no sound at all. It seems like only when she starts speaking does the volume come up.
So if you remembered anything in particular from the video, maybe you can share and we can bounce off of that.
Okay. So basically it went down when people would clap?
No, even your audio right now is low.
Yeah,
To
you're
me.
very low, and I have it on max.
Let me see, I don't know what happened. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. It's just not good.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'm just gonna stop. Do you mind me coming back on? Because I don't know what else I can do.
It's up to you guys. Well, I just sent that link out though.
Okay, isn't it the same link?
It's not gonna. I don't think it's gonna be the same link every time.
I mean, but it'll be the same link for today.
If you stop it and start it over, there's a possibility that the link might be different.
Be the same one that's posted on Facebook.
Yes.
Yeah, but if she ends it, she'll be starting a new link, right?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it's the same. I think it's the same link because it's the same meeting.
Okay.
That's
Is there a settings tab that you can go to?
I was trying to add you. Let me end this. Okay, so
You're sounding better now than you did earlier, though. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's getting better.
when it was on live on Facebook, I guess something happened maybe.
I don't know. I think it's on Facebook right now, isn't it?
But I just turned it off.
Oh,
still
my
says
screen
live.
is on Facebook.
Still says live on Facebook.
Mhm.
I mean, it says this, but it says stop live,
Now it's stopped.
Now
Yeah.
it's stopped.
Okay. And you can hear me clearly now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I don't know. We didn't have that problem last week,
No.
and it was the exact same thing. I don't know. So did you hear anything that she said?
A little bit.
Okay, so she talked about education. She talked about, what I'm gonna do is, let's see, so,
Hello, Robin, can you hear me?
yes,
Okay, great.
welcome,
All right.
welcome.
Robin, if you remember something, you can say it and we can bounce off of it.
Well,
Because that was a lengthy video. And,
Well,
it seemed to be
it
bad.
it was actually shorter than last week's. It is 9 minutes.
Maybe because I couldn't hear it, it seemed longer.
Right, yeah, no, I understand. So she basically touched on different reasons why our family unit is broken. And one was, she talked about when we lost, that she feels that we lost power with disciplining our children, like in our expectations. She doesn't get into it there, but I just thought it was good as an introduction. When we lose power in raising our children, disciplining our children, that we lose power in breaking up the family unit to a degree. Another video talked about just the decline in marriage, that in 1960s and before, even during slavery, more Black children had both parents in the household, or knew who both parents were, regardless of the situation. When we're talking about during slavery times, and there were more marriages. There were less children. There were less Black children. They said approximately 8% was born out of wedlock, and after 1960, it grew. There were less marriages, higher divorces, and more single parents, and more absent fathers. So, so that was education. It was talking about marriage. The other video that I'm not going to show had, what was the show? Claudia. Claudia, does anybody remember Claudia?
Yeah.
Okay, Diane Carroll starred in Claudia. And there's a scene that she's a single parent. I think she has like 4 or 5 kids. And this woman comes in, a white woman, says, you are not allowed to have a Black man here. And she says, oh, I can't have company. I can't have anybody spend the night. And she said, no, we're paying you, providing you are a mother with these kids, and you cannot have a man in there. So even through the media, we talk about how the Black family was divided. Nikki, I didn't disconnect it. So
that was Julia. But go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Nikki just called and said she couldn't get on.
No, I'm saying the show.
Oh yeah. Julia. Who was Claudia? Somebody was Claudia.
Nobody.
Yeah, it was a Black woman. Claudine, maybe. It was Claudine.
Yeah, that was a good movie.
Yeah. Anyway, so she talked about the welfare system without talking about it. She talked about the educational system without talking about it. They touched on, we didn't get to it, they touched on the separation of slavery, but they said even during slavery that Black men and women would gravitate back to each other, or would keep some type of family unit better than what we have today. So I would say, to branch off, we can talk about the influence of media, which is very easy to start off with. We can talk about the educational system, because she alluded to not all special education, but she did talk about special education by putting more Black boys into special education. And without saying it and being an educator, she really means for behavior problems versus learning disabilities, because we do have learning disabilities versus behavior problems in special ed. So she kind of threw that all together. So I don't care where you would like to, wherever you feel comfortable starting. I mean, we can start with the media. The media is easy. Okay, we have the influence of videos. We have the influence of songs that does not support respect for each other. in the videos, women are objects, you know, um, booty shaking. Everybody has on a bathing suit, no matter where you live. And I'm saying that's we're objectified versus being treated as we say that we are a queen.
Well, I think it's long before the media.
I didn't say that was the origin. I'm just,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I agree with the media. However, if we take it back a little further, we would have been in a position to deal with whatever came out from the media. So we were in a weakened state, and now we have media and things like that to deal with. So the family structure started to break down in the late 60s with welfare and things of that nature. So that's when you started to have a lot of single mothers. And then it seems that correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that we have accepted that as our norm. And if not the norm, maybe a better way to say it is that we've accepted that as being at least okay. When before we had ourselves in check, we didn't need someone to say whether someone else, no matter what images they might have put out, our society said what was okay. And now pretty much anything goes. I don't know what would not go at this point.
But how do you think that if welfare was something that was originally created for white people, how come it got so out of hand in the Black community?
I don't know if it was
that we became people to depend on it.
Yeah, I don't know if it was originally created for whites, so I wouldn't be able to answer the question because the first piece of the question is something that's an unknown to me. So if I follow up with an answer, I would be accepting something that I don't know. So I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying as a person answering, I don't know that welfare was created for white people.
From my recollection of that history, that yes, I do recall understanding that the welfare was primarily for white people. I think, and this could be a little off, but I think it was for the soldiers when they returned from a war, I believe.
It can't be because those homes would have had a male and a father, a male and a female. So it couldn't have been for soldiers.
Well, that wouldn't have meant
maybe other white people.
They might have had their families, but that wouldn't have meant that they had the finances to manage their families well. So the welfare was just to provide those white folks with resources.
So they could have a man. They could have a man and a woman, and the blacks couldn't have a man and a woman.
Yes. Okay. Later on, that's what I was getting to with next. But I'm coming from Aisha's question about why it was not so harmful to white folks when welfare started. When the welfare started, and it was for white folks, from the things that I have come across, white folks weren't being treated in the way that black folks were treated in their so-called ghettos. When the welfare, what do you call it, social worker or whatever, would go to the home, they would make the black families prove that they didn't have a man who was working and they're contributing to the family. If there was a man, if there was a husband or a father there, he couldn't be employed. and this was like later. So I would have to look at the exact history because wasn't planning on talking about it from that perspective. But yes, what I do recall was that white folks got welfare, they benefited from it, and then they were able to get off of welfare. Black folks, when black folks used welfare, they started to put in different laws, and the caseworkers would go and like you talked about with Claudine with the movie, they would actually go and verify that there wasn't an adult man who was working that was in that home, and that a lot of people attribute that system and other things related to that as being why women started to, mothers in their family started to feel like they would be able to benefit financially better without having a working man in the home because the government was providing resources.
Well,
wait, can I was just trying to, that was kind of long. Oh my gosh, I had the definition. I wanted you, well, one was, why was welfare made, according to Google? During the 1890s, a liberal government, can you hear me? I just thought about it. Adopted many social programs to help the poor who had suffered from a long economic depression in the 1880s. So we're included. One of the most far-reaching was passing the tax legislation that made it difficult for wealthy sheep farmers and something else. And then the other one was the national welfare system, emphasis during the first 2 years of Roosevelt, the New Deal, which we kind of touched on as far as the wealth gap last week, was to provide work relief for millions of unemployed Americans. Federal money flowed to the states. Remember we talked about the redlining states? I don't know if anybody remember. To pay for public works projects, which employed the jobless. So I just kind of wanted to read that because it definitely ties into last week's discussion with the generational wealth gap and what you're saying. Continue, Kevin.
I was finished. I wasn't trying to be long. I thought I was just answering what was being talked about, but I'll try to be brief. Let me know if I'm taking too long.
You're good.
All right.
Vincent came over.
Yeah, I'm visiting. We're not social distancing though, but I'm visiting. First of all, you got to understand there was a separate but equal policy going on in the United States. So there was nothing created for blacks. Nothing. There was no policies that were created that had us in mind, not one. So, and even if it did, there were other instances, there were other rules that kept blacks out of welfare because it was suited to discriminate against people who migrated north from the South. You know, it also discriminated against women who had males living in the household. So they used all of these measures to keep blacks out of welfare. You know, and there was a whole host of other things that happened as well that kept blacks from getting these benefits. Trust me, nobody ever looked at black people and said, we're going to create something just for them. There's always been resistance to that.
And when they gave it to them is when our decline of the family started. And, right?
Well, he's saying it was never created for us.
No, I heard that. And then I asked another question. I said, when they gave it to them. So that's including everything he said. And when they gave it to the blacks, that's when our family started to decline.
Okay.
I would agree.
So he says he disagreed. But Kevin, if you remember, 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry, because this is how I tie things together. I remember Kevin saying nothing. He kind of said the same thing. He said nothing was created for us, solely us. Anything.
Right. So let's all agree. So let's go to what's messing us up. It wasn't created for us, but Roosevelt gave it to the blacks. So
included the black.
yeah, he gave he included the blacks in that. And that is one of the things that harmed the black family structure.
Yes, I agree.
Let's try not to go back to what it was created for. Yes, nothing was created for us. All right? They decided to get our votes and give us some of their goodies. And their goodies affected us in a different way than it affected them.
Well, we had different restrictions, and we talked about that a little bit when we were talking about different states were being given different funding. And
I think you're just asking for clarification of what we agreed to.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Like, is this correct? Yes or no?
Do you?
Right?
Yeah.
I don't agree to that.
Yeah, of course they did.
I don't agree to that. This is
Okay.
Of course they did different things to us. I'm just saying that according to what the lady said in the video, and according to what I think we knew, is that we had a better family structure prior to this. Or am I wrong? Was our family structure worse, let's say in the 40s, 50s, 30s, 20s?
No, of course.
Was it worse then, or is it worse now, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s?
Okay, so what Ken is referring to, I don't know, when Nikki got on, and I know I had the technical difficulty, and Linda, and I know Vincent wasn't here. So the video talked about how during the slavery period all the way up into the 1960s, in 1960, I should say, the family unit, they had a better marriage rate, and children knew who both parents were. That's what Ken is referring to. Okay. Whereas there was a decline in 1960, beginning of 1960, and where there were only like 8% of children born out of wedlock. And then in the 1970s, it grew, 1980s, it grew, and up until today, that it surpasses 50% born out of wedlock and single parents.
Ken is stating it like it's a cause.
I don't agree with that. From what I recall, and I'm born in the 60s, Linda Galashaw.
Me too.
And my mother once used the program. I think it was based on self-motivation. I think we had the same amount of fathers participating with their children. I think we had the same amount of fathers in the home during the late 60s and 70s. It's just that you couldn't report that the father was there, or you wouldn't receive any assistance. But I think they were there. I think there were more men in the homes during that time that were unreported. And although it looked like that in the numbers, I think the fathers were there and around. I grew up in a project setting. There was over 365 families, and I think just about all of us had a father in the house. There's very few kids that didn't have a father. And I think it just became, if you wanted to make it, I think a lot of our people got comfortable with the welfare program, but then there were some that made better. There were PIG programs, there were educational programs where you could further your education. I think, Ken, your mother was telling me about some programs that she was able to take advantage of that came out during the 70s. And that was from the Department of Social Services, and not so much the workforce unemployment. I think that we had better opportunities to educate ourselves, and we took advantage of those opportunities. So my mother went through several programs that were offered to get herself there.
When did things change?
Things changed. Things changed when they started giving our young people apartments and independence from their parents. It started when DIFAS started interfering with how we were raising our kids.
Could you give us the timing, like the when meaning timing?
The time period, I would say, I think I witnessed the biggest disintegration of the Black family around 19 maybe 1978, 1980. I think that was the last of the big hurrah. When we started to see a change with the music, we started to see a change with the rules and how we could raise our children, the discipline we could use, and along with the fact that now you can be 17, you can get your own check, you can get your own apartment at 18, and that just pulled the family apart. I don't think any young girl who just got pregnant should be allowed to move into an apartment and function as a parent. She needs to stay there and learn from her mother what she can do for her child, what's best for her child. And I think that just started separation. So you got a whole lot of young people with apartments for their boyfriends. Again, unreported individuals in the home, but they're there.
Right. So if she's talking, if Linda's talking about apartments and such, that's Section 8. And when I mention welfare, I'm talking about state aid, and that would cover Section 8 and all of that stuff. When I mention welfare, I'm talking about all of that. Now, Linda's talking about 78, and she's limiting her discussion to what she personally witnessed. So there's a big country. So Linda didn't witness what was happening. She was a child, so she didn't witness what was happening from like 63, 64, 65 on in different regions of the country. So I mean, and that's good information about what you personally saw, but we're talking about blacks globally, not what one person happened to have seen
well, let's talk
at
global.
a very young age.
Let's talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk global. I still can read. That was just my personal opinion about how it was going in this local area or in my world. But in reading, the 60s was also the civil rights movement period.
Right.
So when you talk about a separation and a breakdown of the family, I didn't see it in the 60s.
Right.
We were too busy trying to get our civil rights.
Correct.
We were working
and the people responding to that said,
time.
let's give them stuff. Let's give them goodies. We see them wilding out now, so let's give them goodies. Just like what's happening now. They see the people tearing up communities and whatever. So every business, every entity is trying to be black friendly. They're trying to give. Just like what the government did in response to the Black Power movement, the Civil Rights movement in the 60s. So that's how that president, what was Lyndon?
I got it.
He's on record as trying to give the blacks a bone in order to control them for the next 200 years. And that's what
factually. Let me interject here. The big problem that happened was in the 20s and 30s. The bourgeois blacks left our community. They moved out. This cycle of gentrification that we see today didn't originate now. This started way back then. So whenever a black person got something, they moved out and they moved next to white people. So what happened to the black family is that we separated our community. And so the affluent black folks, the people, the bourgeois, the people who are there that are setting the culture, the income with the disposable income, all of that stuff left the community. And that's a lot of our urban centers today. And that's why it's ripe for gentrification, because people with disposable incomes leave the community. And so what you leave there are people of low education, low income for the most part, who don't have a chance to participate in the community in ways that make it vital.
And
this has nothing to do with welfare. No, well, let's see like this, right? The culture setters of the community, right?
So the bourgeoisie, in your opinion, the bourgeois set the culture.
Yes, because if you separate it out, no, if you're not spending, well, I'm gonna give you some text to read. There's a book called Black Manhattan, written by James Weldon Johnson, right? The guy who wrote Lift Every Voice and Sing. He wrote a book called Black Manhattan that talks about this very phenomena in Harlem. This has happened in Harlem 3 separate times, right? A. B. Another book called The Crisis of the Negro Intellectual, written by Harold Cruz. He talks about it in that book. And so what I'm trying to tell you is, if poor people spend the majority of their time trying to get it together, they don't have the wherewithal and the time and the disposable income to do the things that the bourgeoisie can do.
We're talking about children out of wedlock.
I'm
So
trying
I don't know
to
what you're
explain
talking
that.
about disposable income. So if I have less disposable income,
Let me finish.
that would
Let me
lead you
finish.
to believe that
Let
I
me
shouldn't have
finish.
a child.
Let me finish.
Right?
No, has nothing
Right,
to do
because
with
we
having
can see
children.
that right here in Patterson.
I'm trying to tell you.
Okay, wait, excuse me.
I was still talking though.
Okay, but 3 other people were talking. So
I'm just trying to explain to you that there is a connection between black wealth and this out of wedlock. You would never even know. Children would still
I'm
be
asking
having
you to
kids.
explain
Well,
the connection.
let me. I'm explaining the connection while you're asking me to explain the connection.
No, you're not.
Right?
No, you're not.
Can you let me explain the connection? Can you
Go
let me
ahead.
explain the connection? Everything can be done in a
You're
slogan.
explaining something, but you're not.
You interrupted me, man.
You already had the
Well, let's
opportunity.
talk a little
You
better.
You interrupted me.
excuse me. All right.
What I'm trying.
I need him to
Let's be a
stop
little more
saying
precise.
I'm trying to explain it to you. Just
You don't want me to
explain it.
explain.
Okay.
Just explain it.
Okay.
If you make a certain amount of money and your kid has a child out of wedlock, that child is in your house.
It's still a
If you
kid out of
poor,
wedlock.
yeah,
Don't
but
have
the numbers.
kid out of wedlock.
Okay,
Don't.
wait. Ken.
He don't want me to be right.
It's not about right or wrong.
It is about right or wrong, and he's going to interrupt me.
Right now, this is a
It's not up to what I want. If you're not right, you're not right.
All right.
No.
Yeah. Okay, wait, Vincent, wait, please. This is a discussion. We have these discussions, so other people can be provoked to think, talk, and discuss about our same topics. So we cannot talk on top of each other. We have to be respectful, and we have to wait until the other person is done.
Yes, but we have to be respectful of time.
Linda, okay.
Right.
All right.
All right.
But Robin,
Yeah,
we
I
need
am.
to be respectful of time.
No, I made 2 points. Income.
Yeah, you can't take long to explain.
You know, I give up. I give up, miss. I'm done. Because in the middle of me explaining, I keep getting interrupted. So I'm done. I'm done.
Okay, income and what else? Because this is beneficial to others.
I say culture and income, right? It's you guys, and I'm not making a class discussion so much as I'm saying poor people are so hung up in their struggle, they can't have certain conduct. They can't have certain behavior. So the people who, like right here, the people who go to back to school night, those are by and large a different group of people than the people who can't make it. Not the people who don't make it, the people who can't make it, the people who vote, the people who do this, the people who do that. You remove those people from the communities, and neither group of people has an influence on each other. So then the poor has no influence on the bourgeois, and the bourgeois have no influence on the poor, and the culture suffers as a whole. Now, I'm not telling you that our birth rate out of wedlock is really much higher than white folks. I'm not going to tell you that we're counted differently. What I am saying is that whole phenomena shouldn't even affect us. And it's affecting us because our bourgeois leave the community.
I can't even say that for again, I'm going to think small.
Can you see us, Linda?
No, I cannot.
Okay, so did you want to
No,
respond
do we
to
have
that
terms or
before?
something? Or
Did you have something to say, Linda?
I had some.
yeah, I think culture has a lot to do with it. I can go with that, but I don't think that's the main factor. And if you look at our urban cities, we often have the affluent side of each urban city. There's a side of affluent taxpayers or residents of the town. They're still there. Their interaction with the masses or the larger group of urban cities, which are impoverished, are somewhat uninvolved because there is no interest. There's a level of satisfaction of, hey, I'm here and that's it. I don't think we have the drive that we need to get past the things that are happening to us. I'm not so sympathetic to the fact that, oh, poor we are being this and we're being deprived. We can do anything we want to. But the problem is the masses like to sit back and watch a small group struggle to bring equality to the masses. If they would get up, and I do believe that, if you'd get up and get involved, we would not be in the condition that we're in. And I don't think that has anything to do with other ethnicities. I think it's a problem with us.
I don't
Okay,
We've gotten comfortable.
I don't disagree.
what you're kind of, okay, so you're supporting culture is one of the problems. That's what you're doing. I just want you to realize that. And you're supporting, give me 2 seconds, you're supporting that, could you mute? You're supporting, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you're supporting culture because that's a part of the culture. Economic resources, fall within our culture. And you have to understand that within the economic resources structure, that we have a different value system. And if you're in a survival mode, and we're talking about the poor versus a upper middle class, which Vincent is referring to as bourgeoisie, we have different value system. One is trying to survive, one is saving and thinking about education and thinking about, so that's understanding poverty. But is that the reason? Okay, because let's bring it back. We're talking about the reason, we're talking about our family unit. We're not talking about our
Right.
community.
And I don't think it's deprivation.
But you can't talk on top of me. We're talking about our family unit, the Black family unit. Go on.
Right. I don't think it's deprivation. I don't think it's deprivation. I think it's a lack of, what's a good word? Unification. It's lack of unification. It's definitely not deprivation.
Well, Linda.
Some of our greatest accomplishments was done when we were in our poorest state, right after slavery.
Okay,
it did
Linda,
not deter the great minds that derived from that period.
I need to interject there, okay? The unification was because everybody was at the same place.
I'm wondering if either the topic needs to be.
Can we agree on that? So if I'm a slave and he's a slave and she's a slave, yeah, we may have a better unit in trying to get out because it's going to benefit all of us. But if that's not, the reality is, if that's not, let's say if that's not their problem, unless they are altruistic, which some people were, which some whites were in helping Blacks, that's the only time that you're going to get that unification. So, and that's what I was saying, understanding, what we were talking about, understanding poverty. My problem, if I'm making $11,000, my issues are a little bit different than making $60,000. I have different problems. It's no different from a celebrity status. Their problem is not our problem at all.
Right. Right. Okay. So you would say that we were on the same level, more in the same situation as why we were able to work well together. So,
yes.
But I don't support that thought of mine, because if not for industrialization in America, we may have still been enslaved many decades after that. It was not us getting our act together that got us out of slavery. It was industrialization. So like minds didn't help. At one point there was what, for every white man in the South, there was 100 Blacks. and yet we were still enslaved. And how many years were we enslaved? So I don't think it had anything to do with unification on that point. Industrialization, the involvement of other people freed us from slavery. It was never a point where we, you know, there was always an inequality. There were house Negroes. There always was somewhat of a gap within the people.
Yeah.
But it didn't lead us to overcome.
Okay. There has always been inequity when it comes to people, period. Black, white, Latino, Asian, you know, I don't think we're negating that at all. We're talking about what our problem was that broke up and continue to break up and divide the Black family. Because I think we're getting lost in the economics and staying with the economics. If that is a problem, we're asking for the dots that are connecting family to economics, education to economics, because whether I was a house Negro or a field Negro, I was still a slave.
Right.
So, I mean, that's what I mean by unification. You know, they had more unification, and their family, as stated, based on the statistics, not based on Christopher Columbus, CCP, based on a global, I think Ken was talking globally, position. So we were stemming from, or I was stemming, or the conversation stemmed from what the video was talking about as far as sex. And even though it was the civil rights movement in time that we still declined in marriages,
And again, I think that was basically on the books. I think we were still.
Well, we can only go by the books unless we hear a narrative.
So that's like believing everything that's written by Caucasians. Is that right? That's why we were talking about control of Black media, so we can tell our story, the real story. It's a different story from what's been recorded. Would you not say that?
No, what I'm saying is, you're fine. Never mind, because I think you're missing my point.
Here's my bottom line on it. I'm not gonna say anything else on it. My bottom line is that we refuse to be accountable to ourselves. We refuse to admit the fact that the enemy is us. Every ethnicity has been able to come to this country and overcome whatever obstacles. We are still in stage one. Until we start taking accountability and responsibility for what's going on in our communities, we are forever going to be at the hand of someone else.
Okay. All right. So the topic is, I just like to refresh the topic, because I think we get lost in what the actual topic is the family unit.
Linda, so are you saying that the family unit makes us, where our irresponsibility is what's messed up the family unit? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I think that's partially true. Yeah, I think that's partially true. I don't think that's the sole factor, but I think that is a factor. And I want to say this much: as we keep trying to behave like everyone else, and like you said, everybody else comes to this country. There's two factors that I think you overlooked in everybody else coming to this country. The first factor is only the best from every other country comes to the United States. We don't get their worst people. The people who act like the irresponsible people you're referring to, never leave the home country. So there are Chinese people just like that. There are Koreans just like that. There are Indian people just like that. They just don't, let's say India has 1 billion people, right? And if their top 10% of that billion people, their most brilliant people, out of that 1 billion people, right? If 10% of that comes to the United States, that's 10 million brilliant Indian people. The poor of India don't get to leave. The unintelligent of India don't get to leave. The unambitious in India don't get to leave. And the irresponsible don't get to leave. Why do I say that? Statistics pan out that once a family is here for 3 generations, right? It's all the same for all of us. 3 generations in, Chinese people act just like everybody else in America. Indian people act just like everybody else in America, and all other ethnicities. So I partially agree with what you're saying about personal responsibilities is holding us back, but I do want to interject that we are a unique people in this country. When everybody else comes to the United States, they know that they're coming here above us. Everybody knows that. Everybody looks down on us. And Toni Morrison made a statement to that effect. They come here and they say, we're not them. That's the bottom. You know what I'm saying? Before they even know, they just going on what they hear.
Right.
So I'm done.
Right. You're right about that they are told that we are the less than, but I'm not going to agree that the best of each ethnicity or country nationalist group comes here and it's the best. Because if you're looking at the Peruvian population, if you're looking at the Filipino population, they have no talents. They had no talents. They took chances and they came over here and they succeed. Now, if we know, again, this is what always gets me. If we know, if we know that Willie syndrome exists, the Willie Lynch syndrome exists, why do we keep repeating it? Why don't we break out of that? See, again, it's our control, it's our dignity. If you go into the Black neighborhoods where poverty is heavy, why isn't it at least clean? Why are children playing in trash? Why are people sitting on porches with nasty houses and the doors wide open? Who does that? Is that the white man? Is it the white man that's selling the drugs in our community? No, it's not the white man. Is it the white man that's pointing a gun at our brothers? No, it's not. It is we ourselves. If we don't start taking stock in our own behavior and altering it in a favorable way towards one another, this is where we are and this is where we stay. You can't keep blaming it on outsiders because nobody's making you do that. If you look at the Black on Black crime, yes, it is the highest. But look at the other ethnicities. Why is it that they don't kill them and point at their brother in numbers that we do in our communities? Why is that? Now, they're living among themselves, a lot of, like Fort Lee. That's mostly, Japanese and Chinese, I think it is. Asian community. Look at the crime rate there.
Yeah, but
it's a choice.
Affluent Asians.
It's a choice. We have affluent neighborhoods too, and we have some towns that are known to be that
Linda,
way.
let me respond to that. First off, talent is only one attribute of people that come here of another country. Another is ambition. I'm trying to tell you that there are unambitious Peruvians. They don't leave Peru. There are unambitious Colombians. They don't leave Colombia. There are poor people all over the world, just like poor Black people. I don't think there's any difference between us and any other people. We were just the chosen people to be at the bottom. You know, it's just it. And we buy into it. Now, I do agree that there is something. Linda, let me finish. Linda, what I'm saying I agree that there is something we can do. I'm not disagreeing with that. But I disagree with if we act like everybody else, we'll get what they get. I don't agree with that. We are uniquely situated at the bottom.
We'll never.
And there, Linda, let me finish. We are uniquely situated at the bottom because everybody, in order for us to leave the bottom, Linda, that means somebody else has to occupy that spot. Nobody wants to be in that spot. So, you know what I'm saying? In order for black people to not be at the bottom, there's a ladder and everybody has a rung on the ladder. Guess what? We're not even on the ladder. We're the ground that the ladder stands on. That's who we are.
Okay, so, all right, so we're talking about economics again. Are you saying, Linda and Vincent and anybody else, that the reason why the family unit is divided, or we have a poor structure family unit, one of the problems, because we know it's multiple, is because of economics? Yes?
No, I don't agree to that.
I think one of the factors is economic. I don't believe, you can't leave economics out of the picture. I don't believe you can leave it out of the picture.
Okay.
Well, everybody's entitled to
out,
their opinion. Can I get like a thumbs up from your reactions? Who feels that economics play a role in the division of our Black family unit?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I think we all agree to that. It plays a role, but it is not the significant role that we need to improve upon in order to gain self-respect and unity in our community. I don't think it's about money.
Yeah, I think it definitely plays a role, but we can throw a whole bunch of things in there that play a role. I mean,
Right. It's
not just one thing.
No, it can't. It definitely can't be one thing. And, not to keep referring back to another discussion, but we know the states were identified as to who is getting funding, which states had more Blacks and received less funding. Like, we truly combed over that and we addressed that last week, but it does play a role in this week's discussion because that's kind of segues into the welfare system and poverty versus middle class, or yes. Well,
Make sure. Now, the welfare system that we were initially talking about when I got here with the family structure, the welfare system is what propped up white families in America to where they are today.
Wait, so I'm gonna
Yes.
right there.
And they're the largest users.
Okay, so if that's what you feel, then that begins our gap. And then having those additional restrictions of having the Black man on paper, Linda, in the home to receive the resources. Are we together on that? Ken, Aisha?
No, last week, what we talked about was the FHA loans and redlining and things of that nature. They did take white families out of projects and subsidized homes, and they placed them in situations where they could get the single family homes. So that's that's like a 1-2 punch. It wasn't just the fact that they gave them welfare and they got so rich off the welfare that.
No, that's not what I said. I said that's where a beginning and division financially began, as well as having more restrictions than them by not allowing the father or the Black man in the household on paper.
No, I don't agree. I think it began with what we were talking about last week, where they were able to build equity. They weren't building equity off of just getting welfare.
Okay, it's
hard to save the money.
To me, that's
their homes. They were able to build equity.
Okay.
Well, I would say that welfare was the beginning of the disrespect of the Black man. That's when he became unimportant during that period. That's what I think.
That's what I was trying to say.
And the
Yeah, that's
system
what I was saying also in the beginning
Yeah.
when you said I was taking long. That's basically what I was saying. I wasn't saying that as soon as black folks got the first welfare check, then they said, oh, we don't like black men anymore. I was explaining the process that it happened over time. So when black folks started getting the welfare, eventually, because the black man was devalued and there was no need for that mother or wife, or, person in the relationship to have this black man there, eventually that became the normal thought was, oh, if I don't need him, then I'll just get the money from the government. That's what I said.
Well, then you have some implementation of feminism that was promoting the division within the home as well. Because in that video, I think it's that video, I'm not for sure, they talk about corporations, choosing who they wanted to work next to. And the black man was the last person that they would rather have a woman of color, a black woman, work next to that person over a black man. So a black man was always the last choice because of inferiority.
Yeah. Well, to this day, the black man is the most intimidating individual there is on the earth, the black man. So by allowing his woman to work and also to pay even more money, it made it even more difficult for the black family to stay as a unit.
I will say this: are you guys familiar with Are you familiar with Prince George's County, Maryland? That's like one of the wealthiest and most successful black communities in the United States, right? This is a community where the bourgeoisie stay. Now it's not perfect, it's not a utopia, but they are doing much better than all the other black communities in the United States. And there are several, I think, of the top 10 black communities in the United States. Most of them are either in Maryland or California, right? And we need to study those and see why those communities are thriving, why the average income is higher, why they have more kids that succeed in high school, why their achievement gap is smaller. We need to look at that, as opposed to, we're looking at, because black people have always lived in some sort of alternative family arrangement from the beginning. So I can't really subscribe to the breakup of the black family. If I think anything, the breakup of the American family was the automobile and the nuclear family. Because I think most of us lived in extended families, not just black folks. So the automobile, what that did was it lent the way to factories and plants moving out of the cities into the suburbs. And so the flight out of the cities to the suburbs, and so then it made us people who still lived in the cities have to commute to the suburbs because we couldn't move there. We couldn't buy a house there. So we had to commute there. So that made everything harder. So the automobile is a horrible invention for communities. Maybe great for convenience, but it was horrible for communities. And the nuclear family, the idea that I got one kid and we need a 4-bedroom house is a wealth grab. So we can't put away as much money. We can't invest. We can't do that kind of stuff either.
So you're saying they put factories in the suburbs? Is that what you're saying?
They moved to the suburbs. Churches moved to the suburbs.
They moved the factories to the suburbs is what
they did. That's a fact.
Okay, I don't see that fact.
I don't see that either, but
I don't know where you live, but this was the Silk City, where
it was the Silk. It's not the Silk City. Look at our factories today. What are they doing?
Are we talking about today, or are we talking about then?
I'm talking about the gradual movement of employment from the cities to the suburbs.
That wasn't recently. You couldn't see. Now you're mixing what you're talking about.
No,
Are you
I'm not.
today or
Maybe
back?
you just don't understand me. I'm not mixing it at all. Revlon is in the Verge. Revlon is in Edison. Haagen-Dazs was in Edison.
Okay. All right. The factories move. I mean, I can't debate certain.
The auto plants are not in the city.
I think everybody knows, but that's not the case. I mean, I
We
think
can look it up though. That's a verifiable fact.
very far out. It's just far fetched, and I think that no matter what the subject was about black people, you would have brought in your favorite word is bourgeoisie, and I think that
I wasn't even talking about the bourgeoisie this time. I'm just talking about moving the factories to the burbs where the white people are. Because not all suburbs are rich white people.
no matter
Elmwood
what,
Park is not rich white people.
that's what you're gonna say because you said it enough today.
I've been on the phone a half an hour, man. I've been on the phone a half an hour.
So,
Okay, let me ask this question. If we could just name 3 things that would bring us out of this present state, get us off the bottom, what would be those 3 things we would need to start with? What about that? We've already defined some of the obstacles.
Okay, wait.
That would bring us.
We're gonna go with KK first because Ken was talking on top of you, KK. So we're gonna go with KK first. We're just gonna go around. Ken, Vincent. Actually, let me stop. I'm gonna start with Linda. Linda's question. KK, Vincent, Ken, up to Aisha, and I will be last if there's anything to add.
Okay.
Okay, Linda.
Three things that would move us out. 3 strategies.
No, you changed.
Yeah, that would move us out of our present state.
That's changing the question. The question originally was, what would be 3 things that we need to move this out of the state? And I don't know what you mean by out of the state. Are you talking about out being having
out
family?
of our present state? Out of our present state.
This topic is
out of our present state.
And I'm very adamant about the topic because we just don't have weekly discussions about Black lives afterwards. The topic is the family unit. Now, if you can give us suggestions on what could encourage the family unit to take place more and be stable, then that is how I'm going to reframe that question. Because otherwise,
okay, well, that's what I meant.
Like
to bring us
5 other Zooms.
Right.
All right. So
well, that's how I intended it. You're right.
Oh, okay.
To bring us out of the present state of separation.
I'm going to go last because I'm the moderator.
Oh.
Okay, KK.
Well, I posed a question, so yeah.
Yeah, I can yield because I don't understand. Our conversation is so convoluted. I'm lost in my brain. I'd be honest with you.
Okay, so the question is,
what 3 things could bring out?
I don't have 3 things available right now. If somebody else wants to answer 3 things that could bring the families together, go for that. I'll start. Maybe I could chime in after I hear something. My brain wasn't going there earlier, so I'm just confused. I'll wait.
Aisha, do you have anything? I mean, I have an answer, but no.
I don't have 3 things. Like Kevin, I'm a little lost as to where the focus is, but if I had to come up with 3 things, I would say education, prison reform, and reparations.
I agree.
Would bring the family back together?
Yes.
That would help reunite the Black family, those 3 things.
Education.
I'm just giving my opinion based on the discussion we're having at the moment. I don't know if it will or it won't, but these are the first 3 things that came off the top of my head.
I agree, and I'm going to tell you why. education, unfortunately, you know, it plays a role on how we think, how we move, and understanding, and it also develops our value system. And I do harp on value system. So I totally agree with education. Okay, knowing better, as we say, is doing better, and that falls under education. That doesn't mean necessarily a college degree, just being educated, being in the know, and being knowledgeable and thinking logically. The second thing Aisha pointed out was reparations. Reparations would not close the gap, the generational gap, but it would help with a reset and change once again our value system of mindset of survival, and be able to concentrate on other things. Only because I have to refer back to understanding poverty, the workshop that Ken and I attended a while ago. When you are stressed out, and everybody would not become rich after if we receive reparations, you just have a different mindset. You have different set of problems, and poverty focused on religion, family, protection, and they had a lot of sex. They had the most amount of sex. The middle class, even though it was divided, upper middle class and lower middle class generally thought about saving money, education, and the family unit. So it was just a different mindset. I think religion was in there, and they had less sex than those who fell in poverty. The rich and the wealthy has the least amount of sex.
Excuse me, Robin, why are you explaining her
Because
three things? I really
you
wanted to hear. I thought you were going to go last.
I am last.
Yeah, so she said three things. Can she explain the three things? She mentioned those three things. I wanted to hear those.
I didn't have any explanations. Like I said, three things that came off the top of my head, and I thought we were moving to the next person.
Right.
Oh, no explanation. Okay, I didn't know.
Well, so Linda, Linda, I was agreeing with Aisha and explaining it, developing her three standpoints, because for me to say the same three things and not explain it is invaluable.
Oh, okay. Are you last? Are you last? Ken doesn't have three things?
Well, Ken had walked away. That's the disadvantage on the phone. So Aisha, I mean, only because we can see each other when we, So Aisha said, reparations, education, and what was the third one?
Prison reform.
Oh, prison reform.
Okay.
So Ken has no.
Okay,
additional. Vincent.
I just had to get something to drink.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's all. I'm back.
All right, Ken. What are your three? What are your three, Ken?
I want to just focus on one. I will say, I'm all for reparations, and I have nothing negative to say about reparations. I think we deserve them. So I'll make that one of my three as well. My first one, though, and I think it's the most important, I think we have to really want to come up out of this and do better. You can find certain people in certain pockets, and you can claim that everybody wants it, but the reality is everybody doesn't want the same thing. And we as a group, we tend to harm ourselves, and we don't own up to it. Like, I know I did a lot of bad things financially, a lot of dumb things, and I'm even planning on doing.
Right.
But at least I recognize it. A lot of us are just running blindly. And although a lot happened to us, I'll be the first to admit that and say that, and we need to try to right those wrongs, whether they be reparations, legislation, or whatever the case may be. We still have to do for self, and we need to change. I always say we need to change the culture. We need to change what our values are. We tend to make a lot of excuses, saying, oh, well, you know, when we were slaves, we had all these extended families. And I think we did. I know that we did. And we did that because we had to. Some little kid's mother and father could be killed off or sold off. And who was going to take care of that kid? The people that were on that plantation as well, whether they were her family or not, had to have extended family, and we survived off of extended family. We are undoubtedly digging ourselves in a deeper hole by continuing to have baby on top of baby on top of baby in bad situations, and sometimes even in good, quote unquote, good situations, because that's relative, whether it's actually good or not. But you might think your situation is good, and then, you know, just because you got $70,000 a year coming in and you decide you're going to have 2 babies, that made you poorer. Those 2 babies made your $70,000 self poorer. And we do that like that. And we look at a woman in our community, and if she's 25 and doesn't have a baby, we say something is wrong with her. We say the same thing about the males. We're digging ourselves into holes. And that's on top of whatever was done to us. That doesn't negate what they did to us. They put us in a bad situation, and we are on autopilot right now. So my number one is that we have to really want it so much that we're willing to do something different about it, outside of making excuses.
I agree with that too.
Okay. Can I be next to last? Because Robin says she's last. I wanted to give my 3 because I don't know how much longer I can stay on the line. But my 3 would be, I like reparations, but that wouldn't be 1, because that would be like giving out the stimulus check. I find that people are taking that stimulus check and they're not thinking about nothing but spending. We're not ready for the reparation. We have to condition ourselves and be ready for the money so it can go to the right places. So that would not be one of my 3. I would go with religion. I think even if you don't join a church, if you're not Catholic or Baptist, find a God and bring it back in your home, because that helps ground you. That gives you some moral fortitude. So we need religion. We need to put that back. We need to, and doing that, we've got to hold our churches accountable, because they're way overboard in the politics. They're so political now, they're just no earthly good to the mission that God has set forth for them. So it is going to have to start back in the home first. You're going to have to stop buying that pastor 5 cars and an airplane. You know, we have to pull back and start looking at our children and practicing good habits in the home. I think religion is one of them. Education is always good, but that would not be one of mine. Reform, prison reform, big time, because a lot of that is where we lost our brothers at. That's where we lost our men at. They're in the system, and when they come out, they're not set to do so, because prison reform, reentry is a joke. So that's a legislative thing that we need to get involved in and start fighting for. And thirdly, I think, I'm sorry, I'm in an area where it's a little loud. Thirdly, I would lean towards, if we did it on a national level, well, I don't know how to go about that, but I think curfews should definitely be a part of it, because our kids are out in the street more than they're in the house. And we know that their friends have a huge influence on what they do and what they become, sometimes what they become. So with this COVID, families or parents are forced to have their children in their face more, and you see the difficulty of this. They're like, oh, I want to go back to work. I just want to get out of the house. This is your child. You know, this is what you wanted. So you said, this is your legacy, and yet you don't want to spend any time in it. So, you know, I think curfews for children under the age of 10 or maybe up to 12, there should be a certain hour that they're in the house where the parents are forced to deal with their children. Sit down, have conversations, start having dinners together. Quality time. That's what we need. I'm done.
So in your 3 words, could you tell me your 3, because I got lost in your response.
I said prison reform, reentry, religion, and quality. I think would change the way our communities look, our neighborhood. I'd say neighborhoods, because we don't really have communities. If you look at the definition of the word community, we don't have communities. We have neighborhoods. And maybe we could grow to become communities.
Okay, thanks. Vincent?
2 things. I definitely would agree with
religion, reform, and quality time.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with Aisha and Linda, but I would expand prison reform to law enforcement, period. Because a lot of our men were, you know, if you think about one of the big issues with breaking up the Black family was imprisoning Black men. That's been a problem. And so the issue that they were going to prison in the first place and what they were going to prison for throughout the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s is a big deal. So we wouldn't even need prison reform if some of these guys never got incarcerated in the first place. That's issue number 1. So I agree with Aisha and Linda wholeheartedly with that. Secondly, Linda touched on religion. Whether it be religion, even if you're atheist, you need a code of conduct. And that code of conduct seems to work in certain ethnic and religious communities. You know, you got Hindi communities, you got Orthodox Jewish communities, and there's several different sects of Orthodox Jewish communities. You got Orthodox Muslim communities with several different sects of Orthodox Muslim communities, and that code of conduct seems to carry from generation to generation. So it's a code of conduct, right? I think law enforcement would help keep the family together, and I also think us living together. And the reason that I say us living together is because we are uniquely situated in this country. We are treated like no other group in this country. So if we are together, we can protect, we can create our institutions, we can create our businesses. That means we can have manufacturing in our communities, we can have distribution in our communities, we can have all of that stuff. The dollar will turn over more in our communities if we live together. You know what I'm saying? So I think we have to live, and especially us, it doesn't work. See, white people can be individuals. Black people can't be individuals, because whenever somebody Black does something wrong, they say to us, look at you people. So they look at all of us the way they look at one of us, and they look at one of us the way they look at all of us. So not that it counts what they look like, but since they're going to put that on us, we can create for ourselves. And so then we have our entertainers and athletes live and work in our communities, which means then everybody now has to come to us for it. Everybody has to come to us for entertainment. Everybody has to come to us for athletes. So what happens is we become like the Chinese restaurant. How many times have you seen a Chinese person buying food in a Chinese restaurant? You don't see it that much. Everybody else buys food at the Chinese restaurant. So we need to create that for us. We need to say, if you want something Black, you got to come to us to get it. If you want soul food, you got to come to the hood. If you want dancers, you got to come to us. If you want singers, you got to come to us. If you want hip hop, you got to come to us. You want fashion, you got to come to us. And if we're living together, we have more control over that than if I move to, I don't know, what name of affluent Ridgewood, and I start some crap in Ridgewood, and all the white people out there get to benefit from what I'm doing. They get to work at my store. They get to shop at my store. They get to appropriate our culture, all of that. So with the law enforcement reform, I agree with the code of conduct. I'm not going to say religion because everybody's not the same religion or religious. I'm going to say code of conduct. But in addition to that, I think we all need to live together.
I think that's excellent. And you're talking about harboring our resources, right? That would be a better.
Yes.
Harboring the
Absolutely.
resources. Yeah, that's a good one. We did better then when we had more teachers living in our community, more firemen. You're right. They did live more in the neighborhood. My teacher lived down the street. Okay. And that meant something. And she had to act a certain way, and her children had to act a certain way.
That's the culture that I'm talking about.
Right.
That's the culture that I'm talking. And the code of conduct is the community creates its own culture and code of conduct. And it would exist more if we lived amongst each other. But if you got poor people living amongst each other, you're going to have more crime because you're going to have a deterioration in that code of conduct because people are trying to make it happen for themselves by themselves.
Well, could we? I wish we could do an experiment in the Fourth Ward because that's where the majority of us are in Patterson. If we could maybe design some strategies that would address those focal points, just to see if we could get it off the ground to improve education, cooperation, business. We don't have it. We have a bunch of Black people living on top of each other in the Fourth Ward with no resources. And all the resources are of government assistance. So, you got to bite back that hand that's feeding you and start to do it for yourself. And I think
it's going to be amazing how great the Fourth Ward becomes when it's gentrified.
Right. Exactly. and what do we say? And whose fault is it? It's only ours.
Absolutely. I agree. I agree.
I think one thing is to restore. No?
Governor Street used to be the street to live on in Patterson for Black people. But then the Black people in Patterson who had a little bit left. Exactly. Exactly. You left. But you were on 12th Ave. You weren't on Governor Street.
12th and Carroll, between Auburn.
Yeah. And wait. How about this? I was on Godwin. I was right around the corner from you.
I know.
We left too.
If I didn't leave that area, I would be dead or in jail.
No, that's you as an individual, Ken. But as a collective, if we all stay, that doesn't happen.
Those who stayed are in jail. Most of my friends are in jail right now.
But I'm talking about the numbers. I'm talking about if most of us still live there, right? If the hordes of people who were about something and could do something was still there, it wouldn't be the way it is today. The
vacuum we still have them in town.
Created what's there.
What you say?
But Vincent, they're still here. They may have moved out of the ward, but they're still here, and they're trying to do, but they're outnumbered. Okay, we still have Black council, city council members. We still have, well, the superintendent is no longer, but we had a Black superintendent. We had a Black mayor. We had a Black council. We had a Black assembly. We had a Black freeholder majority, and none of that worked. Why?
Because they're in it for themselves. They're not in it for us. They have left. You can leave physically and you can leave psychologically. They have left psychologically.
Okay.
They checked out.
And we never got to it, but we did talk about leadership. Okay, Black leadership, the different types of Black leadership. But we are
that would have to be a separate topic, really.
Well, you kind of moved our topic because we really got away from the family unit because we talked about the subtopics and we never, I mean, maybe we touched on one, but maybe. Yeah. So with that being said, yeah, because we're talking about how right now we're talking about how we can get better versus how could we encourage our family unit to be better, okay? Because we know there's a whole different story for a little girl when there's a father in the house. There's a whole different story for a little boy when there's a father in the house when he's being raised. You know, you know, when they're adults, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about from you know, the inception of birth and the relationship. But I guess maybe we'll talk about it, maybe we won't, or maybe I'll just take a subtopic so we can kind of like stay focused on it. Because I wasn't blaming the media, but I was addressing the media of objectifying the women in the beginning. And when you don't have the respect for the woman that you are supposed to marry, then you're not going to have a family unit. But anyway, so thank you for zooming in on Tastefully Provocative. We will select a more specific topic for next week. And thanks.
All right.
Okay, so you know, yeah, we really got off